Bye-bye.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A9 Kessock Bridge is closed to high-sided vehicles due to high winds. On the M4 eastbound, an accident near junction 32 Corriton has caused significant delays. In West Berkshire, a collision on the M4 eastbound between junction 13 and junction 12 has closed one lane, causing 15-minute delays. In Surrey, on the M25 clockwise at junction 11, 2 lanes are closed, but normal conditions are expected later. And on the trains, disruption exists on the Elizabeth line between Reading and London Paddington, affecting Great Western Railway services. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, the National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will include a new bridge in St James's Park, designed by Norman Foster.
Yes, the translucent bridge will be inspired by the tiara the Queen wore on her wedding day.
But let's get more now from St James's Park with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what's the memorial going to be like?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Yes, the wait is finally over. We have the final design from the renowned architect Lord Foster, who famously once criticised the King for his views on architecture. But of course, today it's all about honouring Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy. On that theme, at Marlborough Gate, which is the big gate you see behind me, which overlooks the Mall, that's going to be renamed Queen Elizabeth II Place. And there is, according to the artist impression, going to be a big statue of Queen Elizabeth II riding a horse overlooking the Mall. Of course, incredibly poignant because she had a deep love of all things equine. Incredibly poignant, of course, as well, significant love between Prince Philip and the late Queen. It's going to apparently, according to the architect, or hinted by the architect, light up at night as well, which is meant to symbolise all the diamonds that were part of that tiara. And the Queen famously also gave it to her granddaughter, loaned it to her granddaughter, Princess Beatrice, for her wedding in 2020. And then we come to the final part of St James's Park's Queen Elizabeth II's memorial, and that is going to be right here at the other end of the park, overlooking Birdcage Walk, going to be renamed Prince Philip Gates, because a new statue of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip is going to be erected at the other side of St James's Park. It's meant to be them, according to the artist's impressions, in their younger years.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, 9:30, live across the United Kingdom, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Now, detentions are expected within days as the one-in, one-out migrant deal comes into force today. But with reports that only 50 people a week will be returned to France, is this just another gimmick as the Labour government struggles to stay afloat?
A damning report calls for urgent prison reform before future failure. New findings show the prison system came close to total collapse multiple times in the last few years.
And schools out forever. Labour's VAT raid sees more than 50 independent schools announce closures so far this year. But the tax grab is still expected to fall short as wealthy families hand over fees in advance.
Big day in Scotland where students are finding out their exam results today. We'll be crossing live to some nervous youngsters as they wait to find out their futures.
Yes, 147,000 young people will open their results today, arguably changing their future forever. We'll be talking through what's going on today in Scotland as lives change forever.
The terror.
It doesn't go away, does it?
No, it just brings it all back, flooding back, the horror, the shock.
That's right.
I'd already started work on my first local newspaper, the Gloucestershire Echo, in Cheltenham, and the results came through 2 weeks after I'd started work, and I spoke to some schoolmates on the call box the night before. They'd done terribly.
Oh, no.
They'd gone down to the school and got the results. So my mum, who went to work, I get a phone call at work at 9 o'clock, and it's my mother. She just said, "I've got your exam. Passes. Passes." So that's a relief.
Yeah.
But they weren't great.
OK, well, it is. It's you sit your exams in the summer and you have this relief that you've done it, it's over, and then you kind of forget about it for a few weeks, and then that August deadline approaches, and you just kind of... My eldest had his GCSE results last year, and we got back from holiday early in the morning and then had to get up early again to go for his results, and it brings it all back. Anyway, do let us know what you think if you're waiting for results. Of course, we've got a couple of weeks to go in England, haven't we, for GCSE and A-level results.
To you guys in Scotland, good luck, and we're wishing you all the very best. So we'd love to know what you think. Send your views and your comments to gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with
Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much and good morning. The headlines just after 9:30. Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France starts today. The government says anyone crossing the channel could face immediate detention and return within days. Tommy Robinson has been arrested at Luton Airport in connection with an alleged assault at St Pancras Station. It comes after footage emerged appearing to show Robinson walking away from the scene. TV host and repair shop star Jay Blades has been charged with 2 counts of rape. Police say the 55-year-old father of 3 from Shropshire is due in court next week. A 4-year-old girl has died following an incident at a water park swimming pool in Hanley and Stoke-on-Trent. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good morning, welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So, it's the big day. Well, in fact, tomorrow's the big day, actually, because I think they lay down the regulations in Parliament today, don't they? But the actual policy kicks in tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the first 50 should be out by the end of the week. But Miriam, human rights lawyers will jump on it tomorrow, the way they jumped on the Rwanda deal at every opportunity. It could be that none go at all.
Well, absolutely. And the idea is that 50 a week could be deported, and these will be illegal immigrants with no connection to the UK.
Yeah.
But how easy will it be to claim that you do have some sort of connection to the UK? It could easily be, well, I speak English and I don't speak French.
I've got a second cousin here.
Exactly. And how would you disprove that? As you say, human rights lawyers will jump on this and find all sorts of ways to find family connections.
And, of course, who should know better than that, than the Prime Minister? He's a human rights lawyer.
Exactly. And even if it's successful, even if they deport 50 people a week, I think someone's calculated today in the paper that's only 7% of the people that are arriving. I mean, you take those odds. If you've got a 93% chance of not being deported, would you not just say, I'll try again?
Someone said it would take us 16 years at this rate to get rid of what we're expecting to arrive this year. It would take over 16 years to get rid of them. They've got to start somewhere, but it's desperate stuff.
They're tying themselves in knots because they will not reintroduce Rwanda or something similar, which allows them to detain everybody and deport everybody. They won't do that, so they're trying all these other solutions that aren't going to work. 50
a week, when 25,000 have arrived already this year, is not a deterrent in any book. It's less than 4%.
Exactly. It's worse than useless. Well, anyway, these detentions, as we were saying, are expected to start within days as Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France comes into force today.
So the idea is to let Britain send people back to France if their claim is deemed inadmissible, i.e. they've got no connections here. Of course, they could lie about that, in exchange for asylum seekers with ties to Britain.
But just 50 returns a week are expected, despite record crossings. And the agreement with France is set to expire in just 11 months.
So how ridiculous is that?
How this is going to work, we've got GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster in the studio now. Catherine, we've been quite dismissive of this proposal, as have many others. But what is the Labour government's argument for this? How do they think this is going to help the situation?
Well, they've admitted that it's not a silver bullet, but it is one of many things that they say they are doing. We had the announcement of a deal with Germany to do with the storage and supply of boats a couple of weeks ago. They've done they have another agreement with France, which is going to allow police to wade into shallow waters. We occasionally see.
Catherine? We
well,
keep hearing
I think it may be by the end. The thing is, you hear these announcements, and then you hear the announcement again, and you would naturally assume that these things are happening. But I think that might be the German law change that's by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So nothing is moving
because the
quickly.
French police unions are objecting to this idea because they say it will expose the French gendarmerie to potential danger from the migrants.
Well, indeed, and we have seen increasing violence, and lawlessness in the camps. Now, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has described it as a groundbreaking principle. I think the word principle there is significant because, of course, what we need is practical solutions. This 50 a week that we're hearing, the government will not put a number on it at all. It is a pilot scheme. It's only for 11 months. The government have said that they want to ramp up the pace significantly. We expect that the first people to be detained, that will happen this week. The Home Secretary has said that in terms of people physically being sent back to France, they want to see that beginning by the end of the month. But of course, we've got 800 people arriving a week on average. The numbers are up 50% on last year. I mean, their own government officials are warning that unless you can send back more people, significantly more people than are coming in, migrants can do basic maths and work out the odds of being able to stay. So is it going to be a sufficient deterrent? The government think that it will make a difference. But will it? Because, as we've seen, if you make it over here, the chances are you will get to stay. You'll be put up in a hotel, you get your board. You may well be able to work illegally. You're not supposed to, but we see it over and over again. Yeah. We saw these migrant hotels. We saw migrants, on their phones. I mean, I don't know where the phones come from. They look like iPhones, some of them, laughing, taking pictures of the protesters. Yeah. It must be infuriating to British people who, many of us, still struggling with the cost of living, seeing people that have broken into the country rewarded, effectively.
Yeah, and at a cost of billions of pounds a year, Catherine, in terms of the hotel costs and the benefits and all the rest of it. That's without the damage to social cohesion.
Huge costs. And I mean, the use of asylum hotels is actually falling, but we've seen it going on for so long. So although it's falling, the anger is building. And then, of course, they've got people being put into houses of multiple occupation. I was at a press conference yesterday with Reform where Nigel Farage was asked about, what do you do when it's not safe to send people back to a particular country? And he just went, I'm done. We've had enough. If you come here illegally, we will detain you and then we will deport you. Now, he told me that how Reform plan to do this, we will get the details later in the summer. But of course, international law says that if somebody comes and claims asylum, you cannot it's not as easy as that. But I think what's very interesting is what's happening in Greece now. The Greek government, they've had like 2,000 migrants arriving on Crete, in just a couple of days. They've turned around and they've said, we're not processing any asylum claims now for the next 3 months. If you arrive, we will keep you in detention and then we're going to send you back. So that will be interesting to see what happens there.
And Greece is signatory to all these international treaties and is part of the EU.
Well, precisely. So, but the government is very keen to say they are returning more people than ever. The returns are up 28%. I think worth bearing in mind, most of those are people who have come legally and overstayed their visas. Right. And most people do come in that way. And I also think it's interesting, the YouGov poll today, that apparently 47% of Brits think that most migration is illegal. In other words, the people crossing the channel on small boats. That's actually only 4% of net migration, because most people coming are through legal routes, entirely allowed and indeed encouraged by this government and successive other
And a lot of people who claim asylum are people who've come over initially on legal visas and then overstayed and decided to claim asylum. So it's a very, very complex system. But politically, I can see a day where Number 10 decides, in terms of the political aspect of this and the next election, we are going to have to do something about international law and international treaties. I could see that happening, but it'll never get through Labour backbenchers, will it?
Well, the government has wanted to do various things, winter fuel allowance, the welfare reforms that it has not been able to get through. I can't see any way in which a lot of Labour MPs would tolerate that. But at the same time, the government do realise that this issue makes people absolutely furious. And I think they do understand that this is key if they're going to have any hope at all of winning the next election, just as the Tories were punished for it. They've got to get these numbers down significantly. But at the moment, it's
and just finally on that, I'm sure they'd be very furious to know that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, she did the BBC, she did ITV, she did everybody, but she refused point blank, yet again, to come on to GB News, where she would have been treated with great respect and dignity.
Well, let's bring in immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan, thank you very much for joining us this morning. What's your view of this new one-in, one-out scheme? Do you think it will have the effect that the government is hoping for?
No, I mean, it's pretty obvious it won't, because, I mean, the numbers will stay the same. So for every one person that's removed, one's going to arrive. So the numbers equal themselves out. But what I think it does do, it's a start. It strengthens UK and an EU member states' cooperation in an international treaty. And I think what needs to be done is to widen that agreement, the one-out, one-in asylum policy, to perhaps even an EU-wide agreement. At the moment, we have an agreement with France, but really we need an agreement with the EU. If the French, we have to rely on the French, that's another problem. So, and French have historically resisted large-scale returns to the UK without reciprocal benefits. So there's going to be some horse trading to be done between the UK and France if we're going to extend this agreement. But I think Andrew pointed quite rightly that the administrative steps to remove people are quite complex. And at each stage, they may be subject to legal challenges. So you may find that those that are being identified, and by the way, it's only those people coming across the boats that will be removed, not the people already here. So it's everyone from tomorrow will be subject to this new policy. And if I'm here already, I wonder how many people will just disappear into the distance, because if they know there's a threat of removal, they may well not turn up and become part of the black economy. So there's a problem there. Now, the deterrent's limited for now, but we may see an extension of it. And it'll only work if people are removed to their home country. Even France won't work, because if we remove everyone to France, what does the French do with these people? It doesn't solve the problem. They have to be removed back to their home country. That is the only thing that's going to work.
Well, Ivan, perhaps we should go down the Greek route, which Catherine was referring to, where the Greeks have just said to these migrants who've arrived in one of the Greek islands, fine, they're just going to effectively put them in a camp. They're not going to process their applications at all, and then they're going to deport them.
Well, the UK may have to make some hard decisions, but however, while we're members of the Refugee Convention and while we're a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights, I'm afraid the UK will not do that. And
Greece
all
are
the
signatories to those conventions?
Yes, as I said, UK will have to make some hard decisions, and ones which don't sit well with the moral compass that we have and our international obligations. If the governments are willing to do that, and I think you're right, Andrew, this is going to be the key issue come the next election. And I think membership of the European Convention is going to be a key issue. And those parties that are willing to come out of it may seem quite attractive to the voters.
Well, we shall see. Ivan Sampson, thank you so much for your time this morning. Well, coming up next, a damning new report calls for urgent prison reform before a total collapse of the system.
But first, if you want some of that elusive holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of our top destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Around eastern parts of the Mediterranean, we have some showery rain, which could be a little bit heavy at times. It's a drier picture further west, albeit some showery rain not too far from Madeira at the moment. Worth bearing in mind, temperatures across parts of Portugal and Spain, they're rising. We're going to get some heatwave conditions through the next couple of days, with temperatures peaking in the low 40s. But like I said, across parts of Greece into Turkey, here we do have some showery rain. Otherwise, the outlook is for things to be largely dry and sunny.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Are the Prince and Princess of Wales animal abusers? It's time now for the head-to-head. Well, Peter's at it again, this time aiming at the Prince and Princess of Wales for daring to breed their Cocker Spaniels. The animal rights activists say that the royal couple are, quote, out of touch, and slam them for churning out a litter while rescue centres are overflowing. It comes after Kensington Palace released a photo of Prince William and dog Orla and her 3 puppies, snapped by Kate for his 43rd birthday. So, is it really cruel? Are the royals cruel for breeding their dogs? Well, going head-to-head on this now, I'm pleased to be joined by Senior Corporate Projects Manager at Peter, Dr. Caris Bennett, and dog trainer John Allison.
There's all these dogs that are desperately needing a home. Why breed more dogs into the world? It sends the wrong message. And in fact, you don't have to look far to see the right message. King Charles and Camilla adopted Molly, an ugly dog from an animal rescue. And we encourage everyone to do the same. If you're looking to have a companion animal at home, please go to an animal rescue, never breed dogs.
It's very important to note that it's natural for dogs to breed and create their puppies. I think it's absolutely ludicrous to label the royal family irresponsible. We just have to look at their incredible record of animal welfare and how much they have done for animal welfare throughout the country. Unlike an organisation like PETA, who only recently contributed to dogs being put in rescue centres when they supported the banning of the XL bully.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News. And an independent review by the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Dame Anne Hours, found that the prison system was within days of collapse on numerous occasions.
Well, let's talk to Colin Sutton, who's a former Met Police detective and who's now Reform UK's police and crime advisor. Morning to you. I guess you're not terribly surprised by Dame Anne's report. She worked in the prison system for years and years and years. When she says it came close to collapse a couple of times, what would that mean?
Well, it means there'd be nowhere to put people who've been sentenced to imprisonment, I guess. And, you know, we'd see more people released early and we'd have more thieves and robbers and domestic abusers back out on the street, which is not a good place to be, is it?
No, absolutely. Now, one of the proposals that has been made by, for example, the think tank Policy Exchange is that we just need to build probably tens of thousands of new prison places. There were nowhere near enough built under the last government, considering the size of the population increase. Do you think that's enough? Do you think that's all we need is more places, or should we be looking at what prisons actually do while prisoners are incarcerated?
I think there's space for that in the policy making, but I think the acute problem is to have more places, and sadly building things is very slow, isn't it? We see across the Atlantic that Alligator Alcatraz, as it's known, I'm not suggesting we have one of those, but they did that in 8 days. You can build these spaces quickly. We have got sadly lots of abandoned Army RAF camps around the place that perhaps could be repurposed quite quickly for that. But the other thing that I mentioned yesterday is the fact that we've got 10,000 plus foreign prisoners who are serving their sentence deported. And if we were to do that, then we would instantly free up 10,000 spaces. What I really don't want to see, and what I think the public don't really want to see, is more people who have been sentenced to imprisonment. I mean, these days you have to do something pretty bad to get sentenced to a term of imprisonment. So these people that we're releasing, they're not the right people to be coming back into the community without there having been any kind of attempt at rehabilitation within the prison service, because they've been there for too short a time.
Now, sorry, Andrew.
Yeah,
I have to ask you, after yesterday, Reform made a big announcement about a new crime and justice advisor, and one of the things that she said was that whether or not male transgender prisoners, so trans women, people who have been born male, should be allowed into women's prisons should be assessed on a case-by-case basis. That's very out of kilter with what the public thinks. What's your view on that?
Well, I think there's two things. One is the whole reason that we've got this task force, which I'm leading, is to get ideas in and formulate a policy so that we're in a position when the general election comes, hopefully sooner rather than later, to put our policies out there to the public. So it's something that's still in formulation, and Vanessa's role is very much to feed into that and give us ideas, and we'll talk about it and come up with a policy. But I think what she was saying, I think what you have to understand is there is a spectrum. The phrase trans woman runs from a man who calls himself another name and wears female clothing to somebody who's been fully
No. The law's quite clear now. There's a man or there's a woman. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and my view is that biological men belong in men's prisons. But the whole thing...
So you disagree with her?
I do disagree with her on that. But as I say, that's healthy. That's the sort of thing that we need to have debates about when we formulate the policy. But the whole thing here is not about, I don't know, some kind of recrimination or punishment for people who happen to be trans. It's about risk, and it's about risk to women. And that should be at the forefront of whatever policy we come up with, to make sure that the risk to women inside prisons or inside any women's space is minimised.
Colin Sutton, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but that is definitely one for further discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. But there's a statement from the Justice Secretary saying the report lays bare the disgraceful way the last Conservative government ran our prisons. My God, politicking.
Absolutely.
Shabana Mahmood.
Well, don't go anywhere.
Yep.
Lots more to come.
On Britain's Newsroom.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, Storm Floris is clearing away and we are going to see the strongest winds really easing out as well. But there are plenty of showers to watch out for, piling in on those brisk, blustery north-northwesterly winds. So further heavy showers across Scotland, Northern Ireland, feeding into parts of Northern England and perhaps North Wales as well. In between the showers, there will be some sunny spells, but it's across southern areas where the sunshine is going to be pretty prolonged. And in that sunshine, temperatures, well, not quite as high as they have been through some recent days, but nonetheless getting into the low, possibly mid-20s. A few degrees fresher than this further north and feeling it because of those blustery winds. Like I said, those winds are easing, and so they're going to continue to drop out as we go through this evening, and the showers are going to start to ease and clear away from the west as well. That being said, there will still be a scattering of showers across many parts of Scotland as we go through the end of the day. Turning dry, though, across Northern Ireland. A few showers for parts of Northern England, but much of Wales, central southern England, it is looking fine to end the day with some late sunshine around as well. Overnight, all those showers are going to die out and clear away, but there is going to be a spell of more cloud and a bit of rain affecting the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, largely dry and with a ridge of high pressure building, that's going to calm things down. With clear skies and lighter winds, perfect ingredients for temperatures to take a bit of a drop. Yes, towns and cities will hold up in double figures, but in more rural spots, it is going to turn pretty cool, could drop to mid-single figures in a few places. A bit of a cloudy start tomorrow morning across the far north of Scotland, but the cloud and the rain here is going to clear away, and then for many it's fine and sunny for a large chunk of the day before a bit more cloud pushes in from the west later on, and we are going to see some further wet weather arriving in the far west later. That's going to spread across most parts on Thursday. Temperatures for many tomorrow up a couple of degrees on today. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the A9, Kessock Bridge is shut to high-sided vehicles due to dangerous winds. The M4 eastbound has an accident between Junction 32 Corryton and Junction 30 Cardiff Gate, causing significant delays. In Cheshire, the M6 northbound has a collision near Junction 18 and Junction 19, with 2 of 4 lanes closed. Surrey's M25 clockwise is disrupted by a crash at Junction 11, with 2 lanes closed and 1-hour delays. And on the trains, expect disruptions on the Elizabeth line between Reading and London Paddington. Great Western Railway services are affected between Plymouth and Gunnislake. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Let us take on some of your financial stresses and pay your mortgage or rent for the next 12 months. We want to give you a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an unbelievable £20,000. We'll also boost that by a further £5,000, so you really could have some fun in the coming year. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So here we go. Detentions expected within days as the government's much vaunted one-in, one-out migrant deal finally comes into force. But with only up to 50 people a week expected to be returned, we're asking, is it another gimmick as the government struggles to stay afloat?
Well, the government described it as groundbreaking, but given that 800 migrants are making that crossing every week, is it really just a drop in the ocean?
Elsewhere, a damning report calls for urgent prison reform before future failure. New findings show the prison system came close to total collapse multiple times in the last few years.
Schools out forever. Remember Labour's VAT raid? Well, now more than 50 independent schools have announced closures so far already this year. And the tax grab is going to fall way short of the Treasury's predictions, as some families have cleverly handed over their fees in advance to avoid the VAT.
And students across Scotland find out their exam results today. We'll be crossing live to some nervous young people as they wait to find out their futures. Well, it was a very interesting interview we had just before the top of the hour, Andrew, with Colin Sutton, who is Reform's advisor on policing and crime.
Newly announced, because he's been a very, very senior copper, banged up some of our most infamous killers like Leo Belfield, and he flatly contradicted the prison governor, who's now the prison advisor yesterday.
Yes, this is a lady called Vanessa Frake, who was a prison governor, is now advising Reform on crime and justice as well. And she said something very odd, considering Reform's position on this idea, which is that whether or not trans women, so men, should be housed in women's prisons should be a matter for a case-by-case basis. But surely all of Reform's support is coming from people who have a common-sense view of the difference between men and women.
And we put that to Colin Sutton, and he said, I don't agree with her, because he thinks, like me, like you, the law says a man's a man, a woman's a woman, and if you're a man, you ain't going in a woman's prison. I remember the great controversy in Scotland when the rapist who called himself Isla Blair was put in a Scottish prison. And I'm sure that was one of the things that helped speed the departure of the dreadful Nicola Sturgeon, who was the Scottish First Minister.
So have we uncovered a split in the Reform ranks? Well, it'll be very interesting to see, because a lot of their political support is based on this idea of getting rid of this woke nonsense, the idea that there can ever be exceptions to the difference between male and female. I wonder what Nigel Farage would say.
He was asked about it yesterday, and I thought he looked quite uncomfortable when he was asked about it, actually, because I think I know, having known Nigel for years, I know what his instincts are, and they would chime with mine and yours and with everybody watching in the
And I'm sure they'll come round to a common-sense position on this, but it is a bit of an unforced error, isn't it?
I think so.
Well, we'd love to know what you think about that and all the other things we're talking about this morning. Please do go on gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Miriam, Andrew, thank you very much. The top story: Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France starts today. The government says anyone crossing the Channel could face immediate detention and return within days. The EU-approved pilot lets the UK send people back to France if their claim is deemed inadmissible in exchange for asylum seekers with ties to Britain. But just 50 returns a week are expected despite record crossings. Critics warn it's too slow, too small and offers no safe legal alternatives. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said this morning that the government doesn't want to put a number on the amount of Channel migrants that'll be returned to France under the scheme. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith says nobody should be coming to the UK on a small boat from France.
France is a safe country. It is a permanent 5 member of the United Nations. Along with the United Kingdom, it gave human rights to the world. No one should be in fear of death or prosecution in France. They may have some interesting menu choices sometimes, but there's no reason for people to leave France and come to the United Kingdom. And that insight is somehow lost on this government. It's lost on the criminal justice system. It's lost on the immigration tribunals. But people who come to this country illegally should all be returned, not some sort of lottery ticket where 90 or 90% of those who arrive somehow get to stay, and the Home Secretary thinks that is in any way acceptable.
Tommy Robinson has been arrested at Luton Airport in connection with an alleged assault at St Pancras Station. It comes after footage emerged appearing to show Robinson walking away from the scene. British Transport Police said he'd flown in from Faro after leaving the country for Tenerife following the incident in July. He was arrested shortly after 6:30 last night on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm. Elsewhere, former Arsenal midfielder Thomas Partey has arrived in court charged with raping 2 women. The 32-year-old faces 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. He's accused of 2 counts of rape against 1 woman and 3 counts against another. The CPS said the sexual assault allegation relates to a 3rd woman. The alleged offences took place between 2021 and 2022. Partey's lawyer has previously said the Ghanaian denies all the charges against him and looks forward to the chance to finally clear his name. TV host and repair shop star Jay Blades has been charged with 2 counts of rape. Police say the 55-year-old father of 3 from Shropshire is due in court next week. West Mercia Police confirmed the charges relate to alleged offences that'll be heard at Telford Magistrates Court on the 13th of August. An independent review by the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Dame Anne Owers, found that the prison system was in days of collapse on numerous occasions. The report found there was a systemic problem with the cost of building new prisons nearly doubling to £10.1 billion. In other news, a 4-year-old girl has died following an incident at a water park swimming pool in Hanley and Stoke-on-Trent. Police said they were called to Waterworld on Festival Way around 4:20 p.m. to reports of a little girl in a critical condition. Waterworld staff and colleagues from the West Midlands Ambulance Service treated her at the scene before paramedics took her to hospital for further treatment. But despite the best efforts of hospital staff, the girl died a short while later. And finally, the first electric car models eligible for new government grants have been announced. Drivers will be able to save £1,500 with the purchase of new Citroën EC3, EC4, EC5 and e-Berlingo cars, the Department for Transport said. The discount will be automatically applied at the point of sale. These are the first models approved under the new £650 million electric car grant. This will enable motorists purchasing a new electric car to save either £1,500 or £3,750 depending on sustainability criteria. And it is hoped the measure will encourage more drivers to switch to electric motoring. And those are the latest headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome back. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
How nice it is to be with you.
And you. Been in bed sick for quite a few days.
Yeah, well, I think I might have infected you. I think I've infected
Yes, I think you definitely started.
There is a big inquest here. Who is the patient zero?
That's right.
Because I came back from my holiday with something horrible.
Indeed.
And I'm still coughing and spluttering.
You've been very generous and passed it around the office.
Yes, and I have got my antibiotics with me. But to our top story today, finally, the government's much vaunted one-in, one-out migrant deal with France kicks off today.
But just 50 returns a week are expected, despite record crossings across the Channel. And the agreement with France is set to expire in just 11 months. So GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster, joins us now to discuss this. This is being billed as Keir Starmer's big policy to smash the gangs. But can it really be as effective as he hopes?
Well, Yvette Cooper has said today it's a groundbreaking principle. Well, maybe in principle, but it's got to be put into practice. The government won't give any numbers on how many people it is going to be.
Because the number 50, Catherine, came from the French. The French media reported it because it was briefed by the French government.
The government don't want to go there. No. They don't want to talk numbers. Now, officially, they say the reason for that is they don't want to give operational information to the people. Smugglers. But it's a pilot scheme. It lasts for 11 months. We don't know what will happen after that. The expectation is about 50 a week will be returned. It sounds like we will start detaining some of the people crossing illegally on small boats this week. Yvette Cooper has said that the first people will be returned to France, hopefully by the end of August. But look, we've got an average of 800 people crossing every week this year. That number is up 50%.
Away. And also, that's another month away.
Exactly. So Will it make a difference? The government are saying, it is not a silver bullet. Their argument is we're doing lots of different things, a deal with Germany, a deal with France on, wading into shallow water, various agreements that they've got that they hope will bring the numbers down. I mean, we will see if they do come down. That you would think, though, that basic maths, people would work out the risk of crossing and the reward. And the reward, I think many people will think, is massive, because most people that make it here are ultimately not returned, put up initially in hotels, all the board is paid for, so on and so forth, often people working illegally. So, no, we will see, but I wouldn't hold your breath for any immediate change.
One of the possible advantages of this scheme is that it will allow border forces to detain people on arrival, because there is a chance that they will be detained, not all of them, obviously. The problem at the moment is that under international law and even domestic law, the government can't actually detain people or lock them up for very long unless there's a realistic chance of deportation. We know there's no realistic chance of that at the moment. So one advantage potentially of this scheme is that they could detain more people for longer. Could that in itself be a deterrent?
Well, potentially, but they're saying that the people who will be returned to France, they'll only be people who have got no legitimate claim for asylum. Now, very often, if you haven't got a legitimate claim, if you're not coming out from somewhere that might qualify, you're going to throw your identity documents in the sea. It's going to be difficult to work out who has a legitimate claim.
But in theory now, could you at least be detained until that claim is investigated?
Well, possibly. I mean, the bill, it's actually being published, I think, literally in the last half hour, so we will look at the details of it. But I think, I was talking a bit earlier about what Greece are doing. There are all these international agreements, these international laws that you say, you can't do this, you can't do that. Greece has just had enough. It's just saying we're not processing any asylum seekers. They are detaining people on arrival, and they say they're going to be sending them back to the country they came from. Now, they're in all sorts of trouble legally, so let's see where this goes. But they're doing it anyway. But, I mean, I have to say, with the Prime Minister as a human rights lawyer, I don't think we can see that happening here.
We're going to have a look later in the week about what's happening in Germany too, because the number of asylum applications in Germany has slumped 60% because of the actions being taken by the government there. So governments are taking proactive action, 60% in Germany compared to 50 a week in this country. And 25,000 have arrived already.
Also, countries that people would think of as being extremely, liberal, like Denmark, have taken a very hard line and have got numbers down absolutely massively. So you've got to reduce the pull factors, which to me seem to still be very, very present.
They even take the jewellery off some of the migrants in Denmark and flog the jewellery to pay for the food and board and lodge.
Wow.
That's working.
There's a piece in the Express today, I thought, which was really interesting, that when people arrive, I think many people would assume you would get their DNA, fingerprints, etc., etc. That's not happening. Who these people actually...
If we want to go on holiday to the EU for next year, we're going to have to submit fingerprints and biometrics. But if you arrive here illegally, you don't.
And can then vanish. Brilliant.
While we've got you, Catherine, let's move on to a different political story, which is about Labour's VAT raid on independent schools. Of course, this is a flagship Labour policy. It was in their manifesto. And they claimed that it would produce £1.5 billion extra for the Exchequer every year. That claim's been scotched. And it's emerged today that lots of parents, particularly at some of the most expensive schools, paid in advance for their children's fees last year, enabling them to escape 2 terms of VAT. This is not good news for the Treasury, is it?
No, it's not. So we knew that Labour were going to do this. This was one of the few and only tax rises that they mentioned ahead of that landslide. And it came in January, but it seems that the very wealthy, who've got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands knocking around, have been able to pay in advance, potentially for years, at some of the poshest schools. So the top 50 independent schools are now sitting on 515 million of fees that have been paid in advance. That is up from 121 million in 2023. And bear in mind, there's over 2,500 private schools in total. That's only the top 50, so you would assume that it's happening elsewhere as well.
These parents who've managed to get their kids to private school, they're savvy. They're savvy and they think ahead, unlike civil servants and, it appears, Labour ministers.
Well, I mean,
if you had predicted this was going to happen.
Eton 63,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if you're able, you're going to save yourself a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, cash in some of your investments.
Yeah.
So the government have said that they have factored this into their calculations. Let's see down the line when the numbers emerge. But, you know, the government think that this was the right move. They are convinced, well, polling has showed that it is popular. 93% of children go to state schools. The government says our priority is state school children, you know, rather than private school kids. But will it bring in the money that they said it would to help those state school children?
We'll see.
Catherine Forster, thank you. Well, we do have now a head teacher at an independent school, LVS Ascot, Christine Cunliffe, who's joining us now. Good morning, Christine. It has been a devastating year for the independent sector, hasn't it? Can you just describe how it's affected your school and the sector more generally?
Good morning. Yes, I mean, it's been a very difficult year for every school in the country. We've had schools that have closed. There's been over 50 since the introduction of VAT in January. But even for the bigger, stronger schools, it's still a huge impact. And we've not seen the worst of it yet. So, as I say, the tax was only came in January. It could have been timed more, you know, disastrously, but they wanted to get the income in by getting it in January. It's caused a lot of upset and angst, children being displaced. 11,000 children, which is over 3 times more than the government predicted would be displaced from independent education. And I think the real knock-on will be seen in September 2025 and also the following year. So we're in for a very bumpy ride.
Christine, the figures show so far 54 private schools have closed or have announced they're to close. Normally you'd lose 50 schools in an entire year. We've still got quite a few months to go, which could see a lot more. We could be losing a lot more quite soon.
Without a doubt. And you know, as a head teacher, you know, I've got peers across the country and I know how schools are struggling. And we're trying to form partnerships to see how we can support each other. But the triple whammy of these taxes, it's not just the VAT, it's the national insurance and also the loss of business rates relief as well, is a huge blow to independent schools. And most of us don't have rich parents in our schools. A lot of our parents are clubbing together with their grandparents and aunts and uncles, especially for children with special education needs. A quarter of my children have special education needs that don't meet the threshold for an EHCP, and they need the provision that we can provide for them. And even in the High Court judgment, the judges acknowledged that the state of SEND provision in this country is a disaster.
And one of the criticisms that's been made of the independent sector is that they've had an arms race to provide better and better facilities, better sport pitches, you know, more and more iPads in the classroom. Actually, over the years, they've made themselves more expensive than they've needed to be. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
I don't totally buy into that, because if you look at the majority of independent schools, they haven't got those facilities. I mean, some of them, you know, some of our schools really do struggle with facilities. Some of the bigger schools that have got these wonderful facilities, they've been donated the money from benefactors, from alumni, people who would want to give them money. And sometimes those facilities, such as sports complex, are being used by the general public as well. So, you know, it's not just for the independent sector. It is, if you look at the figures as well, look at the salary increases. Now, the majority of our money goes in paying salaries, and there's no VAT reclaim on that. It could be 70% of your income. And then running schools as well, the gas, electricity, people have got to be fed. You've got books, you've got national insurance, you've got pensions. There's so much. Many schools are running on a very fine line.
All right, Christine. Well, look, best of luck and have a good summer. That's Christine Cunliffe, who's from that very successful school in Ascot. Now, still ahead.
Will money make women want to have children? We'll also be going through the papers with Piers Pottinger and Nigel Nelson. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I couldn't remember them this morning.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Dan was one of the victims of the attack, and he was just, you know, within touching distance from the leading suicide bomber. And when that bomb went off, it killed 6 people.
It's still really surreal. It's still a kind of strange thought to realise that I was right in the middle of what happened that day. And even though it's 20 years, it still feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
The pain and the emotional torment that goes with that is just as fresh now as when it just happened.
Mm.
And when you think back to that morning, because you've written a book about that day and your experience since, you actually were considering not going into work that day.
Yeah, my whole story of 7/7 is what I kind of term as sliding door moments. There's so many opportunities that were presented to me to do something different, or to stick to my normal routine and not step outside of that. And yeah, there's countless times where if I would have made a different decision, then I wouldn't have been on that train at that time. If I'd have got up on time, if I hadn't missed my stop, there's so many things that I can think back on and think, if only I've done this, if only I've done that. But it serves no purpose now because what's happened has happened.
You were horrendously injured, but people died on that bus that day.
Yeah, I mean, from the area of the train that I was on when the bomb went off, I'm the only one that survived. He killed everybody around me. And that's incredibly tough to live with, to know that you survived something that everybody around you didn't. And I was pretty much laying in and amongst dead bodies and body parts for about an hour and 40 minutes before I was taken out the tunnel.
And what do you remember about the murderer?
I think the most terrifying thing about it is just how calm he was. There was no fear, there was no hesitation, and the most scariest thing of all was he just looked like everybody else.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:22, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Miriam. We've got the panel with us, our favourite panellists. Well, we love all our panellists, actually. But we've got Piers Pottinger and Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, presumably you're going to fall out over Neil Kinnock.
Probably.
well, Neil Kinnock's latest brilliant foray into policy, Piers?
I mean, you can see why, mercifully, Kinnock was never elected as Prime Minister. The man's... I mean, it's just rather sad.
Should we just explain the story? So he says that he's advocating for a tax raid, a VAT raid on private healthcare. But Rachel Reeves' advisors are saying that this would actually hit hard-working families who are just trying to access normal healthcare.
It's crazy. What, in fact, they should be looking at is, and it's a really golden opportunity with private healthcare, is for the vast numbers of wealthy foreigners who come over to use our private health services. Now, if they taxed every procedure, every consultation, they could raise hundreds of millions of pounds a year. It wouldn't deter foreigners from coming over because it would be incremental in terms of the overall cost of these big procedures. And if you go to any of these private hospitals, I've been in a few myself, where the waiting rooms are full of obvious foreigners who all have translators and if we actually use that as a source of revenue, it would be popular with the electorate here because it's not harming the hard-working British people. And for once, it's a clever, well-thought-out plan. The problem with almost everything this government does is they don't think things through. I mean, we've got the migrant issue we've just been talking about. Again, it is clearly not properly thought through because it's full of loopholes. schools, and these rogue human rights lawyers will be rubbing their hands with glee, making fortunes out of delaying. I mean, I wonder how long it's going to take for the first person to be actually sent back.
I imagine. Well, we're talking about the end of the month, Nigel. They're talking about the first person to be sent back.
Yes, that's right. I mean, if we're talking about what they're doing there, obviously it's not going to stop the boats. I mean, there's nothing that's going to happen at the moment.
It's not. You're meaning 650 out a week is not a deterrent.
Well, I mean, I think that it'll deter some people.
Do you?
The point basically is what the government are trying to do is reduce the numbers who are coming across.
Yeah.
So the various measures there, the smashing the gangs, we're now up to 91 investigations into the gangs. The idea of 5 years jail if you put adverts on TikTok, all those things chip away at the gangs, but no, it won't stop the boats. Now,
well, how was one in, one out reduce the numbers? I don't get that.
It's not about reducing the numbers. The whole point there
But you just said it is.
No, it's not about reducing numbers. Reducing numbers overall is what we're trying to do to stop people crossing the channel.
Sorry to cut in, but we're just going to have to cut away for a moment because former Arsenal footballer Thomas Partey has just appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court. He's been charged with raping 2 women. Let's cross to the court now, speak to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's going to bring us the latest, Mark.
Well, that very short appearance in court number 3 here at Westminster Magistrates Court is now at an end. Thomas Partey has gone upstairs and we're expecting him to come out here at some point here. Rather officious security personnel now telling the press where they've got to move to, even though there's absolutely plenty of room on both sides to come down. But there you go, he likes his job. Thomas Partey appeared in court number 3, charged with a number of serious sex offences, 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. Now, those charges relate to 3 separate women. They're alleged to have taken place between 2021 and 2022. 2 of the rape charges relate to 1 woman, 3 rape charges relate to a second woman, and the sexual assault allegation relates to a 3rd woman. He only spoke in the dock here at Westminster Magistrates Court to confirm his name, his address and his date of birth. He's been remanded on bail, conditional bail, until the 2nd of September, and on the 2nd of September he will appear for his first Crown Court appearance at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey. Now, this is a footballer well known, of course, in the Premier League, and well known and beloved by Arsenal players as a midfielder for a number of years until he was out of contract in June of this year. Is now in the process, we're told, of signing for Villarreal on potentially a 2-year contract, and has gone through the medical checks. But for the time being, he's here in London and he is subject to that short court appearance, and his next court appearance will be at the Central Criminal Court on the 2nd of September.
All right, that's Mark White with us at the court, Thomas Partey, a former Arsenal footballer. Let's go back to the discussion. We were, of course, talking about VAT, which I think that's a rather clever idea, Piers Pottinger's.
No, I'm not against that.
But do you agree with Kinnock's idea of putting VAT on private health care?
A tax on private health care, yes. I mean, the slightly complicated thing is there already is one. So you've got insurance premium tax, which will be added to private health care anyway.
Yeah.
So the question then is, does the idea of VAT replace that, or is it added to that? The general principle of raising...
Well, under Labour, I think it'll be added to it.
Well, I
don't
mean,
think they're going to take away a tax.
The general principle about taxing people who can afford it is an awful lot better than taking money away from people who can't
Nigel,
afford it.
what the left
sake.
completely underestimate is that every time you tax something, you change people's behaviour. There's this kind of idealistic vision in the Treasury at the moment that people spend a set amount of money on whatever that is, healthcare, independent schooling, whatever it is. Oh, we'll tax it. People will carry on spending the same amount of money on that thing and we'll reap this amount of revenue. It doesn't work like that. People change their behaviour in response to incentives.
I mean, Kinnock is just spouting more spiteful socialist nonsense. rather like the VAT raid on schools.
Yeah.
It's been proven it was just simply a class warfare of old-fashioned, spiteful socialism.
So it's just changing the idea that we
is what
other people subsidise private schools.
Trying to do on private healthcare, this would damage private healthcare. It will not help anyone. It shows how desperate this government is to find money from anyone.
You've got it there in one.
It is absolutely appalling.
Yeah, it is the desperation. That's the point. Look,
and this government is a complete shambles.
None of these things are the best option. All the various tax rises have been the least worst option. What you've got to decide, basically, is
it's all created by Rachel Reeves herself.
If you need...
The best option is for this government to be actually resign and put someone in who knows how to run the economy, as opposed to these bunch of
national insurance on a small business the least worst option?
Well, because the alternative would be income tax or VAT.
Some leadership.
Or cutting... Why not cutting spending?
Well, they are cutting spending.
Well, why not cut it where it matters?
But I mean,
civil service is bigger than ever.
Is it better? Is it not better for business to pay than to have people who are disabled with very little money having to cough up?
This is a nonsensical argument. The fact is, this government is borrowing to pay the interest on its own borrowings. That's what a deep hole they're in.
Nigel Pearce, we're going to have to pause there to be resumed in an hour. But first of all, we've got your 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Yes, thank you very much. The headlines at 10:30. Former Arsenal footballer Thomas Partey has been granted conditional bail after appearing at Westminster Magistrates Court charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France starts today. The government says anyone crossing the Channel could face immediate detention and return within days. Tommy Robinson has been arrested at Luton Airport in connection with an alleged assault at St Pancras Station. It comes after footage emerged appearing to show Robinson walking away from the scene. And TV presenter Jay Blades has appeared at Worcester Crown Court via video link on a controlling or coercive behaviour charge. After it emerged, he's been separately charged with 2 counts of rape. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, we've got a very interesting story coming up soon about China. And I think one of the things that people assume when you start talking about China is this massive burgeoning population, which of course it has been, but not in the future, Andrew, because their birth rates have collapsed and they're now ageing faster than almost any other country in the world. And the Chinese government is panicking.
Fascinating.
That's going to be an interesting interview.
Birth rate's falling in this country too, of course, but I won't agree with that. Now, the former Arsenal footballer Thomas Partey has just appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court charged with raping 2 women. We're going to go back to the court to speak to our Home Security editor, Mark White.
Yeah, hello there.
He's outside the Magistrates Court in London. Thomas Partey, who's a very established, well-known former Arsenal footballer, about to be transferred to another very glamorous football club that you and I have rarely heard of, Villa, something with a V. He's been charged with rape involving 2 women. We are hoping to speak to our Home Security editor, Mark White, because Thomas Partey will be leaving court shortly. He's born in Ghana, so I can tell you about him, and he appeared in court this morning. Obviously, there's huge worldwide interest because, of course, he is such a famous footballer. We're going to go back to the court where, of course, we have got our Home Security editor, Mark White. Mark, all yours.
Yeah, apologies. We've just been repositioning because the police officer who is a liaison officer acting on behalf of this footballer, ensuring, of course, given the celebrity status of this individual, that there's not the usual press bun fight when he leaves. Has just been trying to arrange the press to ensure that they're behind the barriers. You can probably see that there are press cameras on both sides here outside Westminster Magistrates Court, waiting on Thomas Partey to leave this court, because of course there is significant interest in this individual. He is a very prominent footballer, previously Premier League footballer, midfielder for Arsenal, where he had signed from Atletico Madrid. I just see our producer Tom coming out to the front door of Westminster Magistrates Court, which means that Thomas Partey is just behind, and I can see him just about to come out from the entrance there. You can see coming to his waiting vehicle. There's a small protest at one side as he heads towards that waiting vehicle there, and he'll be back in court again, this time at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey, on the 2nd of September. When he was in court here, it was only a very brief 10-minute hearing, as they always are, these first magistrates' court appearances after being charged. He spoke in the dock only to confirm his name, his address, his date of birth, and then, of course, the charges were read out in court. They relate to 3 separate women, 5 counts of rape, 3 counts of rape relate to 1 woman, 2 allegations of rape relate to a second woman, and then that 3rd count, a count of or that 6th count, I should say, a count of sexual assault, relates to a 3rd woman. There was no plea entered by Thomas Partey at this stage. It's not that stage in the proceedings where we would get any kind of plea intention notified by the accused. That will come at a later date. And as I say, he has been released, as you could see there, on conditional bail for that next Crown Court appearance at the beginning of September.
Thanks, Mark. That's Mark White outside Westminster Magistrates Court. Now, still to come.
China is offering parents $1,500 in a bid to boost births. Well, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Extraordinary story, that.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, Storm Floris is clearing away, and we are going to see the strongest winds really easing out as well. But there are plenty of showers to watch out for, piling in on those brisk, blustery north-northwesterly winds. So further heavy showers across Scotland, Northern Ireland, feeding into parts of northern England and perhaps North Wales as well. In between the showers, there will be some sunny spells, but it's across southern areas where the sunshine is going to be pretty prolonged. And in that sunshine, temperatures, well, not quite as high as they have been through some recent days, but nonetheless getting into the low, possibly mid-20s. A few degrees fresher than this further north, and feeling it because of those blustery winds. Like I said, those winds are easing, and so they're going to continue to drop out as we go through this evening, and the showers are going to start to ease and clear away from the west as well. That being said, there will still be a scattering of showers across many parts of Scotland as we go through the end of the day. Turning dry, though, across Northern Ireland. A few showers for parts of northern England, but much of Wales, central southern England, it is looking fine to end the day with some late sunshine around as well. Overnight, all those showers are going to die out and clear away, but there is going to be a spell of more cloud and a bit of rain affecting the far north of Scotland. Elsewhere, though, largely dry, and with a ridge of high pressure building, that's going to calm things down. With clear skies and lighter winds, perfect ingredients for temperatures to take a bit of a drop. Yes, towns and cities will hold up in double figures, but in more rural spots, it is going to turn pretty cool, could drop to mid-single figures in a few places. A bit of a cloudy start tomorrow morning across the far north of Scotland, but the cloud and the rain here is going to clear away, and then for many it's fine and sunny for a large chunk of the day before a bit more cloud pushes in from the west later on, and we are going to see some further wet weather arriving in the far west later. That's going to spread across most parts on Thursday. Temperatures for many tomorrow up a couple of degrees on today. Bye-bye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A9 Kessock Bridge is closed to high-sided vehicles due to strong winds. An accident on the M4 eastbound between Junction 32 Corryton and Junction 30 Cardiff Gate is causing significant delays. In Cheshire West and Chester, the M6 northbound has 2 lanes closed due to a collision expected to clear late this morning. Surrey's M25 clockwise at Junction 11 faces major delays from a road incident affecting 2 lanes. And on the trains, there is disruption on the Elizabeth line between Reading and London Paddington, as well as the Great Western Railway between Plymouth and Gunnislake. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 11. You're watching Britain's Newsroom. Now, China recently rolled out an annual childcare subsidy of about £375 until the child reaches the age of 3, as the country looks to boost its flagging birth rate, with fewer young people choosing to have children.
And this is extraordinary, because is this not China that once upon a time had a one-child policy?
Yep.
The law of the land, what was it, from 1975 until...
2015, I think. Nearly 40
years. You could only have one
child, because they were so terrified about the ballooning population and whether or not China would be able to resource such a massive population. Well, the tide has really turned. And we're now joined by the Times columnist, Cindy Yu. Cindy, thank you so much for coming on the programme this morning. Now, you've written this fascinating piece about what's happening in China. I think lots of people are now familiar with the problem in the Western world of declining birth rates and ageing populations, but the situation is even more severe in China, isn't it? Can you tell us something about what's happening in China?
Yeah, it is much more severe because it's a much bigger country, and as you mentioned in your introduction, the one-child policy seeded a much smaller kind of child-rearing age population now. So we expect the situation to get much worse faster. If you look at birth rates every year, it took China 7 years for annual birth rates to halve. So from about 10 million to about 5 million, it took 7 years. In between, I think it was between 2015 and 2023, compared to Japan, which took 41 years to get to that stage. So it's aging even faster than the Japanese experience. The UN's median forecast sees that China, by the end of the century, will have basically half its current population, 700 million people. And what's even more concerning than that is that almost half of that population will be over the age of 65.
It is an astonishing turnaround. Now, you mentioned in your piece that the Chinese government are finally waking up to the danger of this and what's going to happen when the population halves, when population ages, how are those people going to be cared for, etc. But what about the incentives that they're offering people to have more children? Are they working?
Not really. I mean, they've been very, very slow at doing all of this, to the chagrin of a lot of demographers who've been talking about this for decades, literally decades. But it took them until 2015 to really actually loosen the one-child policy, not even cancel, because they loosened it to the two-child policy. And then a few years later, loosening it to the three-child policy, which is technically what's in place at the moment. But they don't need to worry about the upper cap, because fertility rate is about 1.01. As you know, Miriam, the replacement rate for population has to be 2.1 per couple in order for your population to replace. So basically, Chinese people are enforcing their own one-child policy just because of various cultural and social shifts that mean that they don't want more kids than that. They can't afford it, basically. And the Chinese response has been quite slow, apart from loosening that policy. So last week, they introduced this subsidy for children under the age of 3, but it's basically a drop in the ocean. You know, it takes about 70 grand in terms of £70,000 to rear a child to adulthood in Chinese cities. So if you give them a few £100 a year, it's basically nothing. It's certainly not going to encourage anyone to have more children. So my theory, having spoken to some Chinese demographers, is that the Chinese are reluctant to admit that the one-child policy was such a mistake that they now go full gung-ho the other direction because it would look so embarrassing. At the same time, they probably can't afford anything more generous than what they have offered so far because the economy is in such dire straits. So it's really a chicken and egg problem because, you know, arguably your economy is going to be under more trouble with an aging population, but they don't have money to encourage more births now. But one other thing I mentioned in my piece, Miriam, is that, money is not probably the ultimate answer here. When you look at why young people are not having kids these days, for a lot of young women, it's more education, more opportunities in life. And then they see that motherhood is such a bigger sacrifice than for their predecessors these days. I think that kind of gender equality, a nice working environment, a family-friendly working environment is more the direction of pro-natalist policies have to go down.
Cultural much more than economic. But if I can just ask you one final question about what does this mean for the world? Obviously, the impact of Chinese manufacturing, particularly on bringing goods prices down across the world, on flooding the European market with many different goods. What does it mean that the Chinese workforce is going to shrink so rapidly in such a short space of time?
So I think China will still become this economic superpower before that aging population really takes its toll. So if it can basically exceed the US in the next 20 years, which with the way that Donald Trump is doing things, China has a good shot at doing that, then it can kind of get that, beat that wave. But then afterwards, in the second half of the century, is when it's really going to struggle. And I think the Chinese policymakers will be hoping that automation, AI will be solving a lot of those manufacturing problems. Even now we have robotic supply chains, assembly lines in Chinese factories, which are just totally dark because they're just run by robots, basically. It's more the kind of aging population domestically. How are you going to keep those people alive and satisfied? That's a big problem.
Well, Cindy, thank you very much. Absolutely fascinating stuff. I really appreciate you joining us this morning.
Now, up next, Scottish students are collecting their exam results today.
But first of all, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for our top European destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Around eastern parts of the Mediterranean, we have some showery rain, which could be a little bit heavy at times. It's a drier picture further west, albeit some showery rain not too far from Madeira at the moment. Worth bearing in mind, temperatures across parts of Portugal and Spain, they're rising. We're going to get some heatwave conditions through the next couple of days, with temperatures peaking in the low 40s. But like I said, across parts of Greece into Turkey, here we do have some showery rain. Otherwise, the outlook is for things to be largely dry and sunny.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back, and today is finally the day that thousands of young Scottish students will find out their exam results.
So Storm Flores caused a temporary delay, but students are now finding out their grades for national higher and advanced higher courses. Let's talk to our GB News Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, let's hope it's mostly good news for these students.
Yes, well, very much is good news for the Scottish Qualifications Authority. Now, this is their last year, so this year they had to get things pretty right when it came to delivery, and so far there's been no big hiccups like the blank forms that were sent out last year, but seemingly everything is up this year. Attainment is up across National 5s, Highers and Advanced Highers. They're kind of like our O-levels, A-levels and beyond, and everything has gone up in some cases by more than 1%, which is obviously huge, and that same can be said for, we're seeing more of these technical and vocational qualifications. They're actually up pass marks by more than 20%, 22% of more students managed to pass them this year. So the Scottish Qualifications Authority indeed very, very happy with how things have done. Now, typically when we're comparing results, we often look to the year before, but in terms of education, of course, with the disruptions that COVID brought, we also look at how things were in 2019 and whether we've managed to catch up. And really, for the first time, we're seeing that attainment of A to C grades across Highers and Nat 5s, which again is our O-levels in Scotland, that they are all for the first time really picked up above those 2019 levels. Obviously those 2 years were massive disruption for children around the world, quite frankly, and we saw a lot of kind of sticky back plastic being used to hold the education system together during that time. But needless to say, the post-COVID era for education system seems to be drawing to a close, and they have now levelled out. But of course it's not going to be perhaps the greatest news for everybody. And yesterday I spoke to some people at the careers advisors at Skills Development Scotland about the various options open to pupils should they not get the results that they hope for.
I think it's difficult. I think that most calls that we get on the line are people who have applied to university, and I think when you've got that goal in mind and things haven't worked out the way that you've expected, it can be quite difficult in the moment to let go of that plan that you had.
Even if you feel that you don't know what tomorrow's going to hold, you have so much to offer, and our advisors are here to help you to explore what would be a good place for you to go on to next.
You've got people to support you along the way, and whatever your results, it doesn't mean it's the end of the road for whatever your kind of chosen career is. There's lots of different options, so just try not panic and pick up the phone and speak to one of our careers advisors, and we can support you along the way.
Just to leave you with a final thought, really, the other thing that improved this year was the poverty attainment gap. We saw a lot more kids from more impoverished backgrounds doing pretty well this year, so good luck, well done if you've got your results today.
Thanks, Tony. Well, you know, it still brings back a shiver to my spine. Does it to yours? The horrors of the A-level results.
And our school had this kind of big front steps. You had to walk up, collect your results, and then walk down again. Of course, everybody's then shouting, "How did you do? How did you do?"
It's humiliating, isn't it?
Well, coming up,
Labour's one-in, one-out migrant deal finally comes into force. We're going to be talking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, who's called the scheme a sham, from Starmer. We might push him about what the Tories did to stop these vast numbers crossing the Channel illegally, of course. Well, they did have Rwanda.
We did have Rwanda. Sadly, it's probably not going to be revived, but it needs
No.
to be, or something of its ilk. Well, don't go away. We'll be back soon.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Floris is now moving well away from the UK, and although it stays blustery with further showers, there'll be plenty of bright weather, winds nowhere near as strong as they were as Storm Floris hit on Monday, bringing the joint record August wind gusts for Northern Ireland and for Scotland. But those winds now coming down considerably. Still a brisk northwesterly breeze, still gusts of 40-45 miles an hour across northeastern parts of the country. Further showers coming through as well. Some of these will be heavy with hail and thunder. They become more focused towards the northeast as the day goes on. Brighter skies to the south, largely dry. Temperatures reaching the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens further north, where it will feel cool in the breeze, but at least by the evening most of these showers are fading away. Still one or two around across the east as well as the west of Scotland, but more towards the northeast of England, and Northern Ireland seeing mostly dry weather with sunny spells into the evening. The south of the UK, clouds petering away and plenty of clear spells developing. Under those clear spells, a few mist and fog patches forming across the southwest as well as Northern Ireland overnight. That's where winds will be lightest. One or two showers and outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, mostly light. A brisk breeze continuing here. Otherwise, it's calm and clear, and temperatures dipping a little lower compared with the previous nights, so into the single figures in some sheltered spots. We start Wednesday with some of that patchy rain across the far north of Scotland. That tends to fade away, and then it's simply a fine summer's day for the vast majority. Bright skies, certainly during the morning, a bit more cloud filtering into the west. By the afternoon, a brisk breeze returning to the northwest. Otherwise, feeling warm in the sunshine.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year. We'll give you a cash lump sum that will cover 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an incredible £20,000. Plus, we'll add £5,000 on top of that for you to treat yourself. You have to hurry though, as lines will close on the 29th of August. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, detentions are expected within days as the one-in, one-out migrant deal comes into force today. But with reports that only 50 people a week will be returned to France, is this just another gimmick as the Labour government struggles to stay afloat?
Well, the government says it's a ground-breaking scheme, but if only 50 migrants are sent back every week and 800 are arriving, is it just a very small drop in the ocean?
And a damning report has called for urgent prison reform before future failure. New findings show this whole system came to close to total collapse more than once in the last few years.
And schools out forever. Labour's VAT raid sees more than 50 independent schools announce closures so far this year. But the tax grab is still expected to fall far short of the Treasury's predictions as wealthy families hand over fees in advance.
And there's going to be some head-scratching at Reform, isn't there, over the policy on prisons after Vanessa Brake, the new Justice Advisor, a former prison governor. What did she say yesterday at that Reform press conference?
Well, she was asked whether or not male prisoners who identify as female, so trans women prisoners, should ever be housed in female jails. And she said that it should be decided on a case-by-case basis, which, of course...
Flatly contradicted today by Chris Sutton, who is the...
Colin
Sutton, who is their newly appointed law and order man, an ex-copper, who said, no, under no circumstances, men go into men's prisons, women go into women's prisons. So I think that's a bit of a dilemma for Nigel. Because we know where Nigel's instincts are.
And I think that the public are very much of one mind on this, or almost of one mind, that men are men, women are women, especially when it comes to things like prisons where women are obviously vulnerable. In enclosed spaces, of course there shouldn't be men in there. And, you know, the Supreme Court made clear, as if we didn't already know, that there are only two sexes, male and female. But I think it was just a blunder. I'm sure they will correct it, but we'll see how that happens.
Well, there we go. We'd like to know what you think, of course. Send your views, post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, the headlines. Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you. The top stories. Former Arsenal footballer Thomas Partey has been granted conditional bail after appearing in court on rape and sexual assault charges. The 32-year-old faces 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. He's accused of 2 counts of rape against 1 woman and 3 counts against another. The CPS said the sexual assault allegation relates to a 3rd woman. The alleged offences took place between 2021 and 2022. Partey's lawyer previously said the Ghanaian denies all the charges against him and looks forward to the chance to finally clear his name. Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France starts today. The government says anyone crossing the Channel could face immediate detention and return within days. The EU-approved pilot lets the UK send people back to France if their claim is deemed inadmissible in exchange for asylum seekers with ties to Britain. But just 50 returns a week are expected despite record crossings. Critics warn it's too slow, too small and offers no safe legal alternatives. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says the government doesn't want to put a number on the amount of Channel migrants that'll be returned to France under the scheme. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith says nobody should be coming to the UK on a small boat from France.
France is a safe country. It is a permanent 5 member of the United Nations. Along with the United Kingdom, it gave human rights to the world. No one should be in fear of death or prosecution in France. They may have some interesting menu choices sometimes, but there's no reason for people to leave France and come to the United Kingdom. And that insight is somehow lost on this government. It's lost on the criminal justice system. It's lost on the immigration tribunals. But people who come to this country illegally should all be returned, not some sort of lottery ticket where 90 or 90% of those who arrive somehow get to stay, and the Home Secretary thinks that is in any way acceptable.
Tommy Robinson has been arrested at Luton Airport in connection with an alleged assault at St Pancras Station. It comes after footage emerged appearing to show Robinson walking away from the scene. British Transport Police said he'd flown from Faro after leaving the country for Tenerife following the incident in July. He was arrested shortly after 6:30 last night on suspicion of grievous bodily harm. TV presenter Jay Blades has appeared in court on a controlling or coercive behaviour charge after it emerged he has been separately accused of 2 counts of rape. West Mercia Police said the 55-year-old is due to appear at Telford Magistrates Court on the 13th of August on the rape charges. Today, Blades, who fronted prime-time BBC show The Repair Shop, appeared at Worcester Crown Court via video link for a preliminary hearing in relation to the controlling or coercive behaviour charge. The TV star previously denied engaging in controlling or coercive behaviour towards his estranged wife between January the 1st of 2023 and September the 12th last year. He faces trial at a later date. An independent review by the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Dame Anne Owers, found that the prison system was in days of collapse on numerous occasions. The report found there was a systemic problem with the cost of building new prisons, nearly doubling to £10.1 billion. Elsewhere, a 4-year-old little girl has died following an incident at a water park swimming pool in Hanley and Stoke-on-Trent. Police said they were called to Waterworld on Festival Way around 4:20 p.m. to reports of a little girl in a critical condition. Waterworld staff and colleagues from the West Midlands Ambulance Service treated her at the scene before paramedics took her to hospital for further treatment. But despite the best efforts of hospital staff, she died a short while later. And the first electric car models eligible for new government grants have been announced. Drivers will be able to save £1,500 with the purchase of new Citroën EC3, EC4, EC5 and eBolingo cars, according to the Department for Transport. The discount will be automatically applied at the point of sale. These are the first models approved under the new £650 million electric car grant. This will enable motorists purchasing a new electric car to save either £1,500 or £3,750, depending on sustainability criteria. It is hoped the measure will encourage more drivers to switch to electric motoring. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3282 and 1.1517 euros. The price of gold, £2,532 and 15 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,157 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So it's the big story of the day. Detentions are expected to start, well, detentions within days, but possibly nobody sent back much before the end of the month as Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France finally kicks into force.
But just 50 returns a week are expected eventually, despite record crossings across the Channel. And an agreement with France is set to expire in just 11 months. Well, we've got GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster with us in the studio. Now, Catherine, this is the big story of today, but do you think it's going to turn out to be a damp squib?
Well, the government say it's groundbreaking. We've heard about this a lot. They're not talking numbers at all. It's worth saying we understand that it will be around 50 a week, which, of course, is a tiny fraction of the 800 a week that are crossing on average this year, some 25,000. It's up 50% on where we were with this last year. So the idea is that detentions will start this week and then returns to France will start potentially from the end of the month. And in return for those that are returned to France, for everyone that is returned, we will take one who has either a family connection or, that's not essential, or comes from a country that has a high rate of acceptance for asylum claims. So, for instance, Afghanistan, Iran, Eritrea. So the government is hoping that this will be one of many things they're doing. You know, they've done another deal with France about intercepting the boats in shallow water, which, you know, we've seen the police looking on the French beaches, infuriating to people, given the hundreds of millions that we've spent. They've done a deal with Germany. The government has made a lot of announcements. It's trying to do a lot of things, but will it work? Because the basic maths would suggest if it's only a 50 a week being returned, your chances are, if you get here, you're going to stay. And lots of people, I suspect, will think it will be worth it.
All right, well, let's bring in the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, who joins us down the line. Chris Philp, at least they've got something that's potentially could send 50 back a week. The Tory Rwanda plan never got off the ground.
Well, good morning, Andrew. I'm afraid this is another gimmick from the Labour government. Just like a year ago, they claimed they were going to smash the gangs. Well, that didn't work, and they don't mention that anymore. This is another gimmick in the same vein. As Catherine just pointed out, 50 illegal immigrants a week amounts to only about 6% of those illegally crossing the channel. That means that 94% get to stay. And common sense tells you that if you've got a 94% chance of staying, they're still going to attempt the crossing. So this, I'm afraid, will make no difference whatsoever. It's another gimmick. Labour have lost control of our borders. This year so far has been the worst in history for illegal channel crossings. It's gone up by 50% compared to last year. And they keep trotting out these little announcements, which basically tinker at the edges. They won't make any difference at all because this weak Labour government isn't willing to do the tough things necessary.
Well, what would you do differently? What would you do differently?
Well, we would implement the Rwanda plan. Now, that went through a lot of legal challenges, both here and in Strasbourg. We had to pass a law called the Safety of Rwanda Act to basically override those court decisions. By the summer of last year, it was finally ready to go. That Rwanda plan would have seen not 6% of illegal immigrants being removed, but 100% of illegal immigrants being removed to Rwanda. And common sense tells you that within a few weeks, or certainly within a few months, people would simply stop bothering to attempt the crossing. That is exactly what happened about 12 or 13 years ago when Australia did something very similar. But what did Keir Starmer do? About 3 or 4 days after the election last year, he cancelled that scheme about 2 weeks before the first plane was due to take.
But Chris, the Rwanda Act would no doubt have provided a stronger deterrent than this one-in, one-out deal. I think most people would agree with that. But nevertheless, there were those of us on the backbenches of the Conservative Party at the time who argued that that act was not strong enough because it still allowed for individual appeals under the ECHR. Would it not have come under exactly the same problems that all the subsequent attempts to stop these crossings have made, which is that once human rights lawyers, once asylum seekers hit on the right arguments to make, what counts as torture, what counts as the right to a family life, the whole thing is ruined by the fact that these individual claims can be made, courts are clogged up for years and years and years, and the deterrent effect is lost again.
Yes, I think, Miriam, you're right. We do need to close off those avenues. And the way that we've changed our policy since last year is to say, for example, that the Human Rights Act should be repealed in relation to immigration matters, and that when it comes to deporting people who have crossed the channel illegally, in my view, there should be no judicial process of any kind, which is actually stronger than the Rwanda policy for the reasons that you've mentioned a minute ago. I don't think any of those appeals should be allowed at all. If somebody comes into the country illegally, they should just be deported immediately without any kind of claim for anything. and there should be no judicial intervention at all, because otherwise everybody will make up their own individual
Chris, doesn't that then put you in breach of various conventions if you don't allow a right of appeal? I mean, I rather sympathise with what you're saying, but would you not be in trouble then with international law?
That's why you'd have to essentially disapply the Human Rights Act in relation to immigration matters. So that stops domestic courts interfering, and you'd also have to ignore Rule 39 judgments from Strasbourg. And in fact, those two proposals I just made, we actually put into a bill before Parliament about 5 or 6 weeks ago, but Labour voted against it. All of that is much stronger, actually, than the proposals made a year and a half ago under the last government. So we've strengthened the position a lot since then by those proposals. But unfortunately, we tabled a bill that would have done this, but Labour voted against it.
Can we ask you, just moving on slightly, without being specific, Chris, because of various police investigations going on, what is your position on whether the police or Downing Street is right here? Is the public entitled to know the ethnicity of people involved in various cases?
Yes, the public, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The public is entitled to know about the ethnic data and, actually critically, the immigration status of people charged with criminal offences and then convicted. And I've got to say, Keir Starmer has a brazen cheek yesterday saying that he suddenly decided this should be disclosed. I've been trying to get this information out of the government using freedom of information requests and written parliamentary questions for the last 6 or 7 months. And his government, Starmer's government, have been refusing at every turn to release that information under FOI and parliamentary questions. And now when he's feeling a bit of heat publicly, suddenly Starmer stands up and says, he thinks his information should be released. Well, it's his government that's been covering this up for the last 6 or 7 months. I've lost count of how many Freedom of Information Act requests and written parliamentary questions I've made trying to get this information out of him.
So should the police be, is it an operational matter for the local Crown Prosecution Service, or should there be a centralised rule here? Because some police chiefs are going to clearly ignore what you're saying.
There should be a centralised rule requiring the police and the Crown Prosecution Service to release, and indeed the prison service as well, to release this data. We can't just rely on individual police forces making their own decision, because sometimes they choose to cover things up, it would seem. So, no, we need a central rule compelling, requiring legally the disclosure of this data so we can see what impact immigration is having on our society. We know, for example, we have managed to extract some data which tells us, for example, that Afghan males are more than 20 times more likely to commit sex offences than average. We know that people from the Congo, for example, are, I think it's 10 or 12 times more likely to commit violent offences. We saw reporting just a couple of weeks ago by The Sun and the Mail showing that people in asylum hotels, so these are people that cross the channel illegally and are now being accommodated by the government at taxpayers' expense, have committed hundreds of offences, including rapes and sexual assaults against women and girls. And I think these facts just need to be transparently disclosed. It shouldn't take, attempts to use the Freedom of Information Act or journalists having to be creative. This data should be transparently disclosed so we know what's going on and we can have a proper public debate about how we can stop this happening.
All right, that's the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, joining us in the studio now, we have political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Matthew, thank you for joining us this morning. I imagine that you don't agree with Chris on everything he's just said, but do you agree that this one-in, one-out deal is not going to have the deterrent effect that the government is hoping?
Just on the Chris Philp comments, I mean, extraordinary, isn't it, to see someone, a Conservative, now in the shadow cabinet, accepting that a flagship policy of a Conservative government of just a year ago was really basically rubbish.
Well, Sir Bill Cash was right, is all I'm going to say on that particular issue.
Where I would disagree with him on his proposals to update a Rwanda plan, one, I don't think he's right, and this is a question of opinion and values, that you should just disapply the Human Rights Act where you feel you'd like to, because human rights are either human rights or they're not. And secondly, I just don't think that the Rwanda scheme, even updated with changes to the law, as Chris Philp is suggesting, would actually do the trick. I don't think Rwanda would take nearly enough people for it to act as a deterrent. So I think it was fantasy, and I think it was incompetent.
If they could get the numbers there, would it be different? If they could
I don't think they could get the numbers there for a start. And secondly, I'm not a fan of the British state. As much as I would like to stop these illegal crossings, I'm not a fan of the British state sending people to a country where the president has won by 99%. He's won 99% of the vote. You may disagree. That's fine. This is my value judgment. On the question of whether the one-in, one-out scheme is going to act as a deterrent, I sincerely doubt it. I cannot imagine that the numbers that might be achievable on this scheme will be anywhere near enough to prevent people who are already sufficiently desperate to get to this country that they are prepared to risk their lives from getting into those boats.
Can we just go back to what you said about human rights? Human rights are human rights. Well, I think most people would agree that there is a basic sense of dignity, a right to life that we should afford every other human being. But nevertheless, this country has a very strong history of good human rights provisions well before the 1998 Human Rights Act. Human rights didn't start in this country when Blair enshrined the ECHR in our law. It's not some great tradition to have all these policies in our domestic statute. Why shouldn't we look at the Human Rights Act again, given what's happening now and the huge change in geopolitical circumstances since then?
What are you afraid of in the Human Rights Act? What is it that just so challenges you about it that you'd like to look again?
So the Human Rights Act puts the provisions of the ECHR into our law. Now, when the ECHR was thought about in the 1940s, the situation in Europe was entirely different. What we see now in terms of mass migration from all across the world, the use of the internet to find out which country has the weakest borders, that was never envisioned. The idea that the ECHR should stop nation-states, democracies, from policing their own borders would have just been abhorrent to the people who wrote the ECHR.
But how is the ECHR, or the way we've implemented it into English law, how is that stopping us from policing our borders? To my mind, the only way we can stop...
Because it gives people rights to family life, which is very tenuous, not to be tortured. The arguments are very tenuous.
Okay, we can't deport people to Afghanistan with or without the ECHR, and we can't send people back to France unless the French agree, unless Nigel Farage and Reform are seriously suggesting that they send boatloads of people back to French beaches and deposit them there, even though the French president would say you cannot do that. That is, to use this word again, utter fantasy. I accept the government has not got a grip on this. It has not got a grip on this. This is a really difficult and thorny issue, which is being exploited by populists who themselves do not have plausible answers. And people should know that. People on the centre-left, such as myself, recognise there is an issue, although I utterly condemn the levels of hate we have seen, any hate that we have seen targeted at asylum seekers and hotels. Anyone who commits a crime, whether they are an asylum seeker or, like me, a British citizen, should be punished under the law. Stop the hate. Let's come together, try to work out how we deal with this. But without the French help, we cannot, in my view, solve it adequately.
I wasn't aware we were getting any French help.
Well, we're not getting much. We're not getting much.
Right.
No.
Certainly not getting value for money. Now, still ahead. Was the UK right or wrong to recognise a Palestinian state? That's what Keir Starmer's proposal is, of course. And up next, we go to the papers with...
Piers Pottinger and Nigel Nelson. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 25 past 11 and you're watching Britain's Newsroom live across the United Kingdom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
And we're joined by the political commentators Piers Pottinger and Nigel Nelson in the studio.
Well, shall we start with whether or not there could be a split in Reform UK? Because the party's newly appointed Justice Advisor, who's called Vanessa Frake, said yesterday that some transgender criminals should be imprisoned in women's jails. Nigel Farage appeared to support this.
Well, when it comes to trans women in prisons, you know, isn't it interesting that we run our country with people who become ministers, who generally have absolutely no idea of the subject matter that they're talking about? I've personally never worked in a prison, so I can't answer it, but I think you'll find that the answer that you'll get from somebody who has worked in prisons at the highest possible level is, I think, basically it's about risk assessment, isn't it?
I've never worked in prison, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, quite an extreme.
Wow.
He was very
Someone who wants to be Prime Minister.
He was very uncomfortable, wasn't he? So, because we spoke a little earlier to... actually, it's in the article.
Colin Sutton.
So, reading on, earlier we spoke to former Met Police detective and now Reform UK's police and crime advisor, Colin Sutton, who flatly opposed the plan put forward by Vanessa Frake.
Is that biological men belong in men's prisons. But the whole thing...
So you disagree with her?
I do disagree with her on that. But as I say, that's healthy. That's the sort of thing that we need to have debates about when we formulate the policy. But the whole thing here is not about, I don't know, some kind of recrimination or punishment for people who happen to be trans. It's about risk, and it's about risk to women. And that should be at the forefront of whatever policy we come up with, to make sure that the risk to women inside prisons or inside any women's space is minimised.
That's the voice of common sense, isn't it, Piers, Colin Sutton? You know, if you're a trans man, if men go in men's prisons, women go in women's prisons.
Absolutely,
and just
yes.
because you're identifying as doesn't change anything.
No. I mean, if you identify as a llama, would you get put in a zoo?
Right.
I mean,
Maybe you would.
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, and I'm afraid this is indicative of a problem Reform has got, which is that when it comes to policy, it all looks a bit flaky around the edges.
They've got 4 years to get it right, I suppose.
They have, but they need to not keep making, I think, blunders on policy announcements before they've thought them through properly. Because the thing that Reform sells itself on is straight-talking, direct, sensible stuff. Now, as soon as they go away from that, they start losing people's support. And although they're way ahead at the moment, it's still a long way to the next election.
But there's no point hiring experts if you don't listen to them. And I think Vanessa Frake's great. I mean, absolutely, that she's been on the front line. She knows what it's like to be a prison governor. She's been in Holloway, she's been in Wandsworth. And
Myra Hindley made her a cup of tea.
Myra Hindley made her a cup of tea and looked after Rose West.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that I was interested about her line on trans prisoners. I actually think that a biological man should be in a man's prison, the same way I think that that women-only spaces should be preserved. However, she made a really good case about if you do the right risk assessment for somebody who has been a trans woman for 30-odd years, it would actually be inhumane to put them into a male prison. She made a really good case.
Did she not notice a Supreme Court ruling?
Nigel. No, the Supreme Court ruling is different. What the Supreme Court ruling said was there's only one biological sex.
Right.
Two, hopefully, otherwise species is finished.
We weren't talking about gender.
Right.
So on that basis, then, it means that the Supreme Court guaranteed women's-only spaces and no one could then make an objection to
the Supreme Court ruling means that if you segregate something by sex, then that is by biological sex.
Exactly.
And prisons are segregated by sex.
Yes, that's right.
And therefore there is no justification whatsoever for anybody who is biologically male being in a women's prison. But just to come back to, Nigel Farage's comment, and one of the reasons that I left Andrew High and Driver the autocue there was because I hadn't heard his comment before saying that, well, I've never been in a prison. How would I know?
Have a view.
And that's completely inexcusable. Like, nobody expects a Prime Minister or a future Prime Minister to have worked in a school, a hospital, a prison, been a bin man. Like, that's not how government works. But the idea that he hasn't thought about this, given the dialogue that's been going on over the last few years, but if you asked him, what are the finer points of Chinese export policy? Now, you might expect him to say, well, I don't actually know enough about it. But on this issue, to not have an opinion,
well, I think particularly as you're announcing this woman's appointment. But I would say just because she's worked in a prison doesn't mean she's any good at it. And the state of our British prisons are appalling. Yeah. It's an appalling system. It really is at breaking point.
But she's an expert. And she's worth listening to. I mean, she also
But I mean, if she's hobnobbing with Myra Hindley and Rose West, I'd also question her choice of friends.
Yeah, I'm not sure she was hobnobbing exactly.
Well, you said she had a cup of tea.
But she also likes the idea of shorter sentences. Her argument, getting rid of shorter sentences, much as David Gauke does. The argument being that if you stick somebody in prison for 6 months, 9 months, they lose their family, they lose their home, they lose their support network.
That's called being a criminal.
And as a result, they become a worse criminal because that's all they've got left.
As you know,
so
Nigel,
it makes sense what she's saying.
I am a great believer in prison reform. We need prison reform because all we do is lock up people in the same way we did in Dickensian times. And it's absurd and it doesn't help. And we don't really make any serious attempts at rehabilitation. And I actually believe we need a fundamental reform of prisons. The trouble is, again, we don't have any money. It comes very low down the priority list. No politician gets votes for sorting out.
There are no votes in it.
There are no votes in it for politicians, and therefore they don't pay any attention to it. And actually, our prison system is barbaric. Like the American system, too, is barbaric. I mean, the Shawshank Redemption is still as relevant today as it was when it was made. And the Americans have just as bad a prison system as they do in Turkey, which Midnight Express was supposed to show the horrors of. No, our prison system is dire. But I do firmly believe that women go to women's prison and men go to men's prison, full stop.
Yes,
well, let's leave it there, unfortunately, because we've run out of time.
Gentlemen, we've got time now, though, for our 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Yes, thank you. The headlines at 11:30. Former Arsenal footballer Thomas Partey has been granted conditional bail after appearing at Westminster Magistrates Court charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France starts today. The government says anyone crossing the Channel could face immediate detention and return within days. Tommy Robinson has been arrested at Luton Airport in connection with an alleged assault at St Pancras Station. It comes after footage emerged appearing to show Robinson walking away from the scene. And television presenter Jay Blades has appeared at Worcester Crown Court via video link on a controlling or coercive behaviour charge. After it emerged, he's been separately charged with 2 counts of rape. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up at noon, it's Good Afternoon with Tom and Emily. What have you got coming up, you guys?
I'm trying to count. So
here we go.
Is that normally a difficulty for you?
It has been in the past, because if you're following what the government is saying, they're saying 1 in, 1 out.
Yeah.
OK? By my maths...
Subject to terms and conditions.
By that maths, anyone who comes across, well, they would be going back, right? 1 in, 1 out, net result 0.
I think that's what you'd assume.
We've all done sort of primary school maths. 1 in, 1 out... No one there,
it all about.
Right? No one there. And yet, under the government's proposal, it's not 1 in, 1 out at all.
No.
It's even if this
thousands
scheme
in and 50 out if we're lucky.
Ah, but for those 50 that go out, so thousands in, 50 out. But then you take a different 50 and put them here.
Also, we're taking the ones the French want us to have, and they'll be the ones who are most likely to have their claim, so they won't be able to be deported. So it'll be people from Afghanistan, Eritrea, those kind of countries.
The French know how to act in their own national interest.
I think so.
Well, I think we've got a genuine complaint to put in with the Advertising Standards Authority here.
But they will say, the government will say, this isn't about reducing the number of asylum seekers we're taking. It's about deterring the boat crossing.
Which it won't anyway.
Yes, we'll still be taking a lot of asylum seekers, the French will be sending them our way, but it'll be a deterrent to the small boat crossings because it'll be more risky for people coming across.
That would absolutely be the case if every single person who came across was sent back.
Well, they're saying 80%
That's not
would
going
be
to
enough.
be the case.
8 in 10 would be enough. Also, we've got Kemi Badenoch on a little bit later. Probably going to ask her about Reform's policy on trans women in prisons and the like, because that rumbles on.
Well, he just unravelled a bit on our programme earlier when we spoke to Colin Sutton, who flatly contradicted Vanessa Frake, the governor, yesterday.
Crime advisor, and he disagrees with their newly appointed...
With the prisons. The prisons disagrees with the crime.
And don't forget, Nigel, of course, doesn't have a view because he's never been in a prison.
I should hope not.
Yes.
Have you ever been in a prison, Anne?
No, but I've got a view. I want men to go in men's prisons and women to go in women's prisons.
Well, I think everyone agrees with that. They're just the difficulty is what people agree to be men.
Yes.
Well, no, I don't. No difficulty about that at all.
I don't think anyone in the last 10,000 years of human history would have struggled with that.
Apart from
some Roman emperors might have done.
Yeah.
For their own reasons. Well, all that's coming up at midday and lots more. But up next is the UK right to recognise a Palestinian state. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Floris is now moving well away from the UK, and although it stays blustery with further showers, there'll be plenty of bright weather, winds nowhere near as strong as they were as Storm Floris hit on Monday, bringing the joint record August wind gusts for Northern Ireland and for Scotland. But those winds now coming down considerably. Still a brisk northwesterly breeze, still gusts of 40, 45 miles an hour across northeastern parts of the country. Further showers coming through as well. Some of these will be heavy with hail and thunder. They become more focused towards the northeast as the day goes on. Brighter skies to the south, largely dry. Temperatures reaching the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens further north, where it will feel cool in the breeze, but at least by the evening most of these showers are fading away. Still 1 or 2 around across the east as well as the west of Scotland, but more towards the northeast of England, and Northern Ireland seeing mostly dry weather with sunny spells into the evening. The south of the UK clouds petering away and plenty of clear spells developing. Under those clear spells, a few mist and fog patches forming across the southwest as well as Northern Ireland overnight. That's where winds will be lightest. 1 or 2 showers and outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, mostly light. A brisk breeze continuing here. Otherwise, it's calm and clear. The temperatures dipping a little lower compared with the previous nights, so into the single figures in some sheltered spots. We start Wednesday with some of that patchy rain across the far north of Scotland. That tends to fade away, and then it's simply a fine summer's day for the vast majority. Bright skies, certainly during the morning, a bit more cloud filtering into the west. By the afternoon, a brisk breeze returning to the northwest. Otherwise, feeling warm in the sunshine.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 12. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, you can't have avoided the row that was following the Prime Minister's decision to say he will recognise a Palestinian state. He's on the wrong end of a backlash from many Labour MPs after Hamas, that's the terrorist organisation, praised the move as, quotes, one of the fruits of October the 7th. October the 7th, just to remind you, was that massacre on October the 7th, 18 months ago, which killed, the worst massacre on Israeli soil ever.
Well, a group of Labour MPs, as well as the campaign against anti-Semitism and the families of the hostages, have called on the government to delay recognising Palestine until Hamas releases all of the remaining hostages. Well, joining us to discuss this is the chairman of the National Jewish Assembly, Gary Mond, and broadcaster Fahima Mahmood. Welcome to the show, both of you. Gary, let's start with you. A lot of people warned when Keir Starmer made this offer to Palestine a few weeks ago that this would completely disincentivise Hamas from releasing any remaining hostages and laying down arms. They've been proven right, haven't they?
Yes, they have been proven right, but I think the debate goes far beyond that. I'm opposed to a Palestinian state under any circumstances, not just at the current time, but into perpetuity. Why? Because the sole objective of a Palestinian state will be the destruction of the Jewish state. Let's not forget that in 1964, when Yasser Arafat founded the Palestinian Liberation Organization, at that time, Gaza was under the control of Egypt and the West Bank was under the control of Jordan. The sole purpose of a Palestinian state is the ultimate objective of driving the Jews into the sea.
Well, hang on, that's the objective of groups like Hamas, Gary. Why could then a Palestinian state not be governed by a democratically elected, peace-loving Arab government?
I don't believe that that is possible. I think that the support for Hamas on October the 7th was pretty well total in Gaza. Yes, that support has been reduced simply because Hamas have been losing and because of the hardships that have been inflicted on the Gazan population. But do not think for one moment that Hamas is not generally overwhelmingly popular, both with the population in Gaza and with the population in Judea and Samaria, the Arab populations there.
Well, let's bring in Fahima. Let's bring in Fahima Mahmood. I'm sure you're pretty outraged by what Gary said, Fahima.
Absolutely, and even Hamas came in, which even previous Israeli ministers have mentioned that Netanyahu sort of backed that in order to have, an enemy to fight. And as we actually know right now, that over 130 UN member states already recognize Palestine. So this isn't a fringe idea. The Palestinian statehood is not a reward for violence. It's necessary for justice, peace, and an end to a brutal military occupation. That's also because clear that recognizing Palestinian state will not stop the war. It may actually, will not stop the war is what everyone is saying, yet not having that, honestly, it has not caused any peace either. In fact, it's only caused more sort of like outrage against the Palestinians for over 75 years. So putting pressure on Israel to negotiate in good faith and give Palestinians diplomatic tools to hold aggressors accountable, this will empower moderates over any group by showing that there's peaceful political routes to justice, not just armed resistance. Let's remember, even in South Africa, it wasn't, free overnight just because the world recognized it. It was also delegitimized apartheid and strengthened by hand of those fighting for dignity. It happened in Kosovo, Bosnia. Even Israel itself was recognized by the UN before it fixed borders, and while militias like Ergun and Hagneth was, active. So why shouldn't that be for the Palestinians now?
But Fahima,
and Ukraine.
Are you not with the case of South Africa comparing apples with pears? Because nobody at the time disagreed that South Africa was a state, a nation state. There was deep disapproval of its policies, of course, but nobody disagreed that it was a state. But the idea of recognising Palestine, even if you agree in principle that should happen, is unrealistic. There is no possibility at the moment or in the near future that Palestine can become a state. It doesn't have the correct requirements under international law for that, does it? As we've been
And I just mentioned, all of those countries did not have that. Bosnia, East Timor, Ukraine, Kosovo, all of these countries did not have recognition by the UN, but it did have, sort of like the recognition which allowed it over time to be how it is now in those countries. And the same should be for Palestine. You are just only saying these things because people do dehumanize people from the Palestinians, and Palestine is not just Hamas.
And why not?
We've seen the
Hang on, one at a time. We'll bring you in, Gary. Hang on.
Sorry.
OK, Gary, respond to Fahima.
Yes. There's nothing worse than failing to learn the lessons of history. We've seen an effective Palestinian state in Gaza since 2005. We've seen what they've done with that state. We've seen the building of tunnels. We've seen the creation of a war machine. We've seen all the overseas aid given to Gaza being used to build up the infrastructure to create the events of the 7th of October 2023. And I guarantee you that if there is ever, God forbid there is, but if there is ever a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria and in Gaza, we will see the same thing repeated time and time again, and Israel won't allow it. And if those Western countries who believe in recognizing it actually put their thinking caps on, they wouldn't support it either, just as America won't support it.
Well, there's two human rights groups that actually call this what's happening now in this current moment and accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing.
Hamas are murdering,
how do you justify that?
Palestinians
How do you justify that?
Fahima, we're going to
have to call a day.
I'm afraid.
We'll give you longer next time. Sorry, Fahima. That's Fahima Mahmood, Gary Mond. Always going to be a lively conversation. Now, moving on, if you're in search of some solid sun, here's a forecast of some of the top European destinations. We can all calm down a little.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Around eastern parts of the Mediterranean, we have some showery rain, which could be a little bit heavy at times. It's a drier picture further west, albeit some showery rain not too far from Madeira at the moment. Worth bearing in mind, temperatures across parts of Portugal and Spain, they're rising. We're going to get some heatwave conditions through the next couple of days, with temperatures peaking in the low 40s. But like I said, across parts of Greece into Turkey, here we do have some showery rain. Otherwise, the outlook is for things to be largely dry and sunny.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Chu, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, the school summer holidays are in full swing and parents are trying to get their children away from their screens.
Good luck with that, because the average 11 to 14-year-old can spend up to nine hours a day on their phones, mainly, as you know, if you're a mum or dad or a grandparent, by doom scrolling on social media.
Well, we've just been on a bit of a driving holiday, and I have to say that when we're in the car, screens can be a bit of a godsend, because long journeys. Yeah, I mean, my kids are a bit older now, but certainly when they're younger, constant, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Can I have a snack? I need a wee.
Need to go to the loo.
It's a bit of an endurance test. Anyway, but how can we get youngsters to embrace the great outdoors this summer and reduce their screen time? Well, we're joined now by
wildlife presenter, including of the very popular programme, The Deadly 60, Steve Batchel. Now, Steve, I'm not a mum, I'm not a dad. I'm going to leave this one to this one here, but it is a problem, isn't it? How do you get them off these screens and outside?
I think for me, it's about making sure that the wild world, that nature, the outdoors can be filled with action and adventure and can be just as enticing as devices can. I cannot stand up and say devices, social media, technology is awful, because the second you do that, particularly as a parent, is the second that you paint yourself as being a prehistoric dinosaur that doesn't understand the modern world, and then you lose your voice. But what I can do is to try and create ways that the outdoors can seem just as appealing, because I know that it works. You know, I've got 3 young kids, but I also work with a lot of young people as well, and seeing young people who spend time outdoors, who do get active, who embrace nature, they've got a fire in their eyes and an enthusiasm, and at the end of the day, they're knackered and they're hungry and they're going to sleep well, and they've been pumped full of oxygen and vitamin D and all the good stuff that makes life better.
It is a particular problem, Steve, isn't it, in the summer holidays? I mean, without the routine of the school day, particularly for parents where both parents have to work, finding activities for children to do is hard. Oh, now, screens are obviously very addictive and they stop kids doing all these wonderful things. But do you think there's another element to this as well, which is that parents and society in general are now much more risk-averse about the physical world and much less likely to let their children just go off for the day, go off into the woods, go off to the beach and explore? People don't do that anymore.
You're asking the wrong person.
Well, true.
I mean, yesterday I went out on a sea kayak with my kids. Bear in mind, my twins are 5 and my oldest is 7. We went out sea kayaking down to Land's End with seals popping up alongside the boat and gannets diving around us, common dolphins feeding out in the bay. I have, ever since they were born, done everything I can to put them through an acceptable level of risk. And you're spot on. You know, it's very different to the kind of risk that I would have done when I was a kid. And my parents, pretty much at the beginning of the day, booted me out the door, took me back when it was dark and I was starving at the end of the day, and I got a huge amount from that. And the world's different now. We can't do that with our youngsters.
Why can't we?
Well, I mean, I think that you get locked up apart from anything else, wouldn't you?
Excluding that.
I mean, I think for me, I have the opportunity to take my kids to do awesome things. And I also have the knowledge and the education to be able to do it too, because this is what I do for a living and always have done.
We're going to have to leave it there, Steve. So sorry, because fascinating discussion. My fault, it's overrun. Right, we've got...
What would you be like with the kids?
Well, I'd kick them out, I think.
Got to keep the timings.
Absolutely.
That's it from Britain's Newsroom. Up next, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. See you tomorrow.
You have a small boat migrant in, you take a small boat migrant out, then you take a different migrant and you put them in. It's the boat migrant hokey cokey, and we're going to tell you all about it.
We absolutely are. And we're also going to be speaking to Kemi Badenoch, leader of the opposition, of course, get her view on protests, what Keir Starmer's had to say about the identity of potential suspects in criminal cases, and also about farming.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Floris is now moving well away from the UK, and although it stays blustery with further showers, there'll be plenty of bright weather, winds nowhere near as strong as they were as Storm Floris hit on Monday, bringing the joint record August wind gusts for Northern Ireland and for Scotland. But those winds now coming down considerably. Still a brisk northwesterly breeze, still gusts of 40-45 miles an hour across northeastern parts of the country. Further showers coming through as well. Some of these will be heavy with hail and thunder. They become more focused towards the northeast as the day goes on. Brighter skies to the south, largely dry. Temperatures reaching the low to mid-20s in the south, high teens further north, where it will feel cool in the breeze, but at least by the evening most of these showers are fading away. Still one or two around across the east as well as the west of Scotland, but more towards the northeast of England, and Northern Ireland seeing mostly dry weather with sunny spells into the evening. The south of the UK, clouds petering away and plenty of clear spells developing. Under those clear spells, a few mist and fog patches forming across the southwest as well as Northern Ireland overnight. That's where winds will be lightest. One or two showers and outbreaks of rain in the far north of Scotland, mostly light. A brisk breeze continuing here. Otherwise, it's calm and clear. The temperatures dipping a little lower compared with the previous nights, so into the single figures in some sheltered spots. We start Wednesday with some of that patchy rain across the far north of Scotland. That tends to fade away, and then it's simply a fine summer's day for the vast majority. Bright skies, certainly during the morning, a bit more cloud filtering into the west. By the afternoon, a brisk breeze returning to the northwest. Otherwise, feeling warm in the sunshine.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Let us take on some of your financial stresses and pay your mortgage or rent for the next 12 months. We want to give you a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, up to an unbelievable £20,000. We'll also boost that by a further £5,000, so you really could have some fun in the coming year. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of August. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now it's one in, one out. Don't shake it all about. It's the migrant deal that kicks in today. But with just 50 returns to France expected each week, is this policy being badly missold?
Well, the government says it's groundbreaking, but given an average of 800 are crossing the channel illegally every week, is it just a very small drop in the ocean?
And believe it or not, countries like Australia, France, even Mexico are warning their citizens about travelling to this country because it's so crime-ridden. Look at the foreign travel advisories painting the UK as a risky destination.
And this hour, we'll speak to the leader of the Conservative Party and His Majesty's most loyal opposition, Kemi Badenoch, on the migration crisis, protests, free speech, and even men and women in their separate prisons.
And is it sexy to be right-wing? Well, the Hollywood star Sydney Sweeney is sparking quite the culture war, isn't she? It's the firestorm, and now some say being Conservative is the new cool. Could it really be?
Now, would you donate your pet guinea pig to feed a lion? Yes, a Danish zoo is asking the public to hand over their unwanted pets to help simulate the natural food chain for its apex predators.
Aww.
This is genuinely true.
It is, yeah. It's not fake news.
A Danish zoo has launched an appeal for people to provide their pets. Now they say unwanted pets, and to be fair, it's not as mad as it sounds.
That's because you're very practical about these types of things.
Look, if these
whereas some of us have a heart, Tom.
If these pets are going to be put down anyway, why not feed them to a lion?
But maybe they weren't going to be put down, you know. Maybe they just saw an advert for this from the zoo and thought, yeah, I'll get rid of it. But if they hadn't seen the advert, they had no intention to put it down.
I take your point. That is a risk.